वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम्
As far as I can see, as far as time extends, no soul was ever born outside this home. No heart has ever beat outside this song. When will we ever see that we must only be to feel the freedom of our unity? For in this great land we share a home.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to each one of you present. I'm Esha Datta, Ehsaas Woman of Kolkata, and I welcome you to yet another Authors Afternoon, special initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation for the love of literature by the lovers of literature from the City of Culture, Kolkata. Today's session is in association with Taj Bengal with the support of Ehsaas Women. The media partner for today's event is My Kolkata. We are particularly privileged to have Samantha Kochharr to grace us with her presence today. Let me tell you a little bit about the foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a non-profitable trust based in Kolkata, founded by eminent literature and cultural activist late Dr. Prabha Khaitan in the early 1980s. Her vision of working for a better tomorrow is embodied in her famous words, "Karm hi jeevan hai," work is life. A gathering where the written word breathes life and the minds of both creators and enthusiasts intertwine. It is also a testament to the Foundation's unwavering commitment to socio-cultural and humanitarian causes. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce author Samantha Kochharr today. Samantha Kochharr is the managing director of a leading cosmetic company in India, Blossom Kochharr Aroma Magic. She is also the chief expert of hairdressing for India Skills and the deputy chief expert hairdressing for World Skills International. She started her journey in the hair and beauty industry at the age of 11 and has worked in the movie and fashion industry nationally and internationally for many years. She is also an avid painter and potter. She has been a practicing shaman since 2013 and has extensively studied energy healing. Over the years, she has worked with people from all walks of life as a grief whisperer. Arivada, The Arrival, is her first book and it is an extension of her spiritual journey. Samantha also runs a popular delicatessen in Delhi, The Tea Room, where the menu is based on her old family recipes and her extensive travels. In conversation with Samantha Kochharr, we have Shruti A. Juvakar, Ehsaas Woman of Goa. She is not only an accomplished professional in her field, but also a literary enthusiast. Can I welcome both of you up here? And over to you, Shruti.
Good evening to everybody who could make time to come to the event today. And we are looking forward to our interesting session, starting with our questions quickly so that we can hear a lot about Miss Samantha, who has such an interesting story to share with us about her life and also about her book. So, Miss Samantha, starting with the first question, which is related to your book. It's a quote from the book. It says that at some point in my life, when I realized the journey was not about becoming anything, but in fact about unbecoming all that was not really me. Could you enlighten us a little more about this journey?
Thank you so much for first and foremost inviting me here. And I think the quote was something that like when you as a writer and as when you're writing, a large part of you also comes out in the book. And in my journey, the unbecoming of who you, because as you grow up, when you are growing up and you are taught, you see some things happen in your life, you get a set of ways that you react. You learn that if you say this, this is what the reaction is going to be. You are taught also that if you do this, you don't do this, you should be like this, you should stand like this. And you're taught a lot of things. And I think, the feed keeps happening. And the feed, interestingly, also happens when you're in the womb, when you're in a mother's womb. And then comes a point in your life where you need to become the real you. And like I said, and I say in a lot of my interviews, is that many times we don't know what is the event that will lead you to a point where you need to stop and say, is this really me? Is this who I am? Is this what I'm to be? And in my life, it was my father's death that actually stopped everything. And then the whole process started of unbecoming, unlearning every belief, every thought, every concept. And when this happens, it's an ongoing journey, the true you starts coming forward. And the true you, when you come through that journey, is always has a divine hand on you. Because all of us are divine beings, like you all know. And that is what our process as humans. So the unbecoming needs the blessing of the divine.
That's very beautiful, what I must say. Moving to the second question, you mentioned at your Delhi book interview when you were launching the book Aribada that something that just pops in your head, it was, and you find yourself writing it out. That is how Aribada took shape. Could you just enlighten us a little more about the whole process?
Like I was talking to you also, and is that Aribada is actually a pure download. I'm coming to the fact that you heard that I'm a shaman. Shamanism is a very ancient practice of energy healing. And I come from a lineage of 300 years. You're chosen into the lineage. You never say that I want to be a part of the lineage. And the lineage, the only prerequisition to the lineage is intense prayer. The intense doesn't mean 40 minutes, but it means hours. There is no touching and healing and all that stuff happening here. It is a very solid process of prayer and certain practices that we do. And with years of, when you get initiated, you give your time and say, okay, I'm going to now start this journey. At some point, you become very fine-tuned to hearing certain downloads. Aribada is an absolute download. It's not a book that is written where I had a story and I thought it should be written. I was told it needed to be written. And like I also shared that I'm a person who failed in English, in school. And my father saw my report card, like I was sharing also, that he said, you come from, my mom is actually, we are Eurasians, we are part Portuguese, part English. And I come from half the lineage of the English, there's a little English running in there. I come from a very English-speaking home and I go and fail in English. My dad couldn't get his head around it. He's like, how the hell? And I don't know where, even till date, where to put full stops and where to put commas and where these things happening. And all I know is that I was told that I'm supposed to write this book, and I wrote this book. And I was told that every day I have to do the prayer concept, the way I was praying had to be changed. And I prayed like that, and then I had to write for an hour and a half after that, and I used to do that. And if you read the book, there are certain parts in the book which is being highlighted as the storyteller. Those have again been, it's not something that I have read and heard or whatever. It has been again with intense prayer that this thing has been written. This book is something that the universal energy wanted people to read. And sometimes it finds a person, a medium through which it can write. Now, they do not look at the fact that you do not know English very well, or you do not know when the full stops come. They just know that you become a channel. You can hear things clearer and you can trust. and you write it down. Sometimes I used to finish writing and I'm like, oh God, how the hell did that? I don't even have the brains for that. I had to sometimes sit for a while to decipher actually what is the meaning that came out of that paragraph. And it used to be so deep, I'm like, oh, that made sense to me also. But this book that came through was a download, and this book I know that will be read by people who need it. Maybe not now, but when it is time, it will reach them. Because there is a lot of healing in this book, and there is something known as the superhuman code. And when you go into the universe, you see, when I hear people who are psychologists and I get a little confused and I get a little nervous also, because they call me also for these meetings and all that stuff to decipher things. All I know is why the human and why energy field and all that stuff. And I only know that sometimes I can't explain things, but I'll tell you one very interesting thing. Actually, to become the superhuman is the easiest thing. And the simplest stories that our parents told us when we were children, like animals talking to each other, like Ollie talks in this book, and simple stories, you will not know how it unlocks something grander in you than you can possibly imagine.
Process of relearning.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. You wrote the book during the COVID, and the character in the book, the protagonist Joy, and the setup and the entire, he's based out of a picturesque village in Goa, and you've written about Tanzania. So how did you manage to have such a calm state in the phases of lockdown where the whole world was struggling to keep their heads in place?
Okay, I also went through the same. However spiritually inclined you are, you may get the practice. I remember in 4 days my business went from absolute running to every country shutting down. Every second day I'd hear, every 7 hours I'd keep hearing Russia shut down, this shut down, that shut down. So my business went like that. And when I get into stress, I cook. So I was cooking a lot. And then I realized that I was told I need to increase my practice. And I've already prayed 3 hours. I said, any more increasing, I'm so going to become a saint. Anyway, so by then it was very difficult to pray for 3 hours, 3-4 hours without my family starts getting worried. Because you see, when you increase your prayer and you also become a little detached from things. And at that point I started praying more intensely, very early in the morning from the basement. I used to sit in the basement and I used to pray. But I'll only tell you one thing, it was a tough time for me, and I think that is why the universe wanted this book out, because it's somewhere when you look at it, it is like as if the superhuman code is written in it, and the superhumans have to emerge, the wise one has to come, and all of you who are sitting here or read the book, somewhere or the other you are the chosen one. The chosen ones to actually create a difference in the world and in people's lives. You don't have to, you're not expected to change the world drastically, but in the small way that you know how to. So yes, this book was written during COVID, and how did I keep my mind straight? It was a lot of prayer. And I think the prayer also led to the book. But I want to also explain something very interesting, like we spoke out there, was that Galjibaga and Tanzania was, Galjibaga was something that I had, I live in Goa, large part in only for 15-20 days. And I remember my mother saying, you're writing about this story, please go and see this place. So I went and saw the place, so that was great. But when it came to Africa, the only place in Africa I had been to was Kenya, and that too only 7 days. And I visited a Maasai village for exactly 1 day. I had worked with the Maasai in my work with the government, like I said, I was the hairdressing deputy chief for the world in hairdressing for the skill in the government. But when I landed up and I had to write Tanzania, and I have to tell you one little funny incident. I first did not put Tanzania, I put another part of Africa. because there was a song by a reggae song, the Lion of, the Lion of Africa, and I thought, I didn't know that the lions are actually in Tanzania, Kenya, and that part. So I have no idea what that whole continent looked like, but I knew that the Maasai, that is the indigenous tribe, come from there. So I had to go into very deep trance, and we call transcendental meditation, where you teleport yourself into a place, become very calm and actually imagine. So yes, this book, this part where you say is very picturesque, very beautiful, was written in where I had to come into a very deep state to actually write that, because for the life of me I had no idea what these places looked like. Okay, so yes, and surprisingly after that, when I asked a friend of mine to give pictures, it was exactly how I had imagined it to be. So yes,
So probably writing this book was a means to stay this calm during the COVID and the lockdown, and where everything was just falling apart.
I think yes, and also I do so much that I finally had to do something to create. I keep creating, and I think this was, another baby that I created. Like I have a picture of my son who's 26, going to be 27. He and the book, I said my two babies. Right?
Okay, so how did you become interested in shamanism, and what does it mean to you? You said that you were the chosen one. So what are the methods that you follow, and what is the practice that you believe in shamanism?
In all honesty, I'm a person who did not even believe in all this, all this mumbo jumbo people go through. Technically, when people used to, my mom is great with energy, by the way. She's not any energy, but with her product, with all this aromatherapy and everything. She's a healer in her own, just being who she is, she's healing. Okay, so I come from, I'm a little about my dad's energy. So the whole thing is like, when people will come to the house and they'll say, with all the peacock feathers, and they will say, all the jade rings and the crystals, and I used to also, oh, bloody hell, what rubbish is this? That I come from there, okay? And I was like, this is all absolute rubbish. Solid medicine. If you get sick, pop one crocin, that kind of philosophy. I never had the time and inclination. And then, like I said, something happens in our life, and my father died. I was not prepared. Like we all are never prepared. We lose our children, we lose our parents, we lose friends. We never think. And so when he died, I think, everyone said, like always we say, you'll get over it, start working, doing things and all that stuff. And exactly that's what I did. Like how we all are taught how to deal with grief. And then with grief and with a very intense professional setup, because I had to take over the company immediately within 4 days of him passing. And being in an environment which was not me. I come from a very education background and a very high fashion background, from movies, fashion shows, and you get bang into boardroom with all figures and all these accounts and everyone suited, booted. The first day of work I didn't even have a pant that was not torn. I only wore jeans that had tears, like everything torn here, torn at the back. And I remember my mother saying, you can't wear this. And I had to find in my wardrobe like something that, and I remember entering that kind of a life where everything was black and white, figures. All the men would scratch their balls because their distributors spit tobacco, and they would not talk to me. They would talk to all the men. They would just not look me in the eye. I came from a very different scenario into things. So all that uncomfort, the grief, led to me getting very sick. And that's where I say, how did shamanism come into my life? Because I came to a point where my body gave up. And actually the doctor said, now you have only 6 to 8 months left. Because the acid had perforated various parts of my gut and my throat lining. And I was taking 8 antacids. And I didn't understand very much. And I remember I one day threw it and I said, now if I have to go, I go. I cannot do this anymore. And that's when the word I started doing this 5-minute prayer, which is, you may close your eyes. Apparently my mom said it works. So you close your eyes for 5 minutes and I'm like, oh God, please save me, do anything but save me, I don't want to die. And somehow something popped into my head. This popping is a great idea. This is the Tibetan medicine. I came running out of my room, I told my mother, I need to have Tibetan. She said, there's nothing known as Tibetan, baby, there is Chinese medicine. So I went running around and I found there's actually something known as Tibetan medicine. And the Dalai Lama runs it, okay? And so when I go to them, I said, please, so they are Nadi doctors, they just touch your thing. And I said, this is the problem. He said, shh, don't say one word. So I think, and then he wrote down in a piece of paper all the problems I had, including keep your temper under control, learn how to say the right words. I'm like, what rubbish is this? But all the symptoms were there. And he said, it will take 3 years for you to heal. I said, so I'm not going to die. He said, no, you're not going to die. Just follow these things, eat this food, and so I said, okay, so from there I started, my alternate therapy, the way I ate, my food, I was going, but I was not still getting well. And I remember in the Peruvian embassy, there was someone who came, and they said, there's these healers come from Peru, shamans, and when I looked at them, I again had a moment, because there were these funny gaps with these little strings coming out from there, and they love to eat sweet. They have no teeth, most of them, because they eat so much sweet. And they said, the master out here will heal you, come tomorrow. I said, no, rubbish, not going to come. I don't want to do this. But my mother said, what's going to go? And I went, and he did something, he prayed over me and all that stuff, and the next day, I just cried. Many days, 3 days I cried. And I told my mother, I don't know what he's done, but he's just made me cry. There is no healing that has happened here. You send me to a person who to cry, you could have just screamed at me, I would have done the damn thing, meaning, but what the hell is this? Anyway, 3 days I cry. I don't know why I'm crying, but I cry, and I cry, and I cry. And the 4th day, I remember my son was eating a pizza. I had come to a point where I couldn't eat the basic things like pizza, food, because I would throw it up. The acid would build up within an hour and a half, it would be in my body. I remember I said, anyway, I don't know. I popped it in. I'm waiting for 2 hours, nothing has happened. 3 hours, nothing has happened. I said, has this guy really? But by the 6th, I was sick. But the whole thing was that something changed in my body. Something changed. People started saying, you're feeling lighter, you're looking lighter. In those days, I didn't even understand when people would say, you're looking lighter. Lighter meant, okay, you're looking happier. I couldn't understand all that. And I remember in 5 months down the line, I was getting better. I went back for my scan, and my body was nearly back and the doctor couldn't understand what had happened. And so I reached out to this thing, and I said, can I pay this man something, He said, no, nothing. But when the time comes, you can pay. I'm like, oh shit, what is this when the time comes? When the time came, and that's when and after a year or so, he called me back and he told me that he couldn't talk English. His granddaughter said that it's time, he wants to initiate you into the process. Initiating into shamanism, I didn't understand shamanism. I only knew it was energy, it was, and I said, what does he want to do? He said he's dying, he's got 6 people that he has to give his lineage to. He wants to give it to you. I said, I again thought, what's going on? I said, he's lost his bloody marbles, first and foremost. One person who's sitting in India, who's a businesswoman, who has no time for herself or anything, and he wants to pass on her lineage. Maybe because he wants this lineage to, continue in my country. I said, I am not a person who is going to teach shamanism or going to go around. It just brings me down from a very strong businesswoman that has been created in the press, and then you start talking cuckoo language like, energy and all that stuff. I said, not happening. He said, oh, no, you're not supposed to ever teach this to anyone. You don't teach our lineage. I said, what am I supposed to do? He said, when you are going to die, and when the time is right, you will pass it on to the next. But we always keep 6 as the lineage. I said, so what am I supposed to do? Oh, you're supposed to only pray. I said, okay, fine. So I said, how many months is the training? 3 months. I didn't even want to go because it was in in South America, and and a part of it. But anyway, I did go. I convinced myself, and I went. And shamanism, it was a lot of resistance, even to the point when I had to accept my lineage. And when I had only questions and questions. What do I have to do? Why am I doing this? Why me? What this? What that? And finally, my teacher said only one thing. He said, you've been a shaman for many lifetimes. You can resist it in this lifetime and not do what you are destined to do. You will take another lifetime and you will do it again. Once you choose the shamanic path, you have to keep training and training and training. And you train to a point where only the presence of you will heal. You don't have to touch, or you don't have to, do anything. You just have to be. And God will speak through you or be with you, and it will heal. And you are being chosen, and now you have the choice and the free will to walk away or to be here. And I say, what does it mean? And shamanism is a way of life. Like Hinduism, it's a way of life. It is how you are, how you think. And through prayer, your mind becomes very strong. So the energy that you can use to kill someone, you can also use to heal. And yes, from the ancient times, occultism is done through the mind. So what is done on people in certain ways, you can undo it with our mind. And that is how, because it is through the mind that you can, and it's the mind energy, that is what you actually, make it so sharp that you can heal. You don't have to touch, you don't have to be next to the person also. You can. So that is what it is, and it's been years of that, and it's also a process of healing and cleaning ourselves. Because when we do that to ourselves, things around us change. You'll be surprised how that is. Like I'm just letting you know. If someone's acting in a particular way in your life, you don't need to tell them anything. You just need to look inside of yourself. And you need to ask yourself only one question. What is inside of me that needs to be healed? Why am I attracting this person or this situation? What needs to be healed? Ask the universe, what do you want to teach me? Because the universe will keep making things happen in your life that are going to make you realize. And once you realize, it will stop happening. But if you don't, the universe will turn around and give you one slap. Now that's also the other. They're the best teachers. But you'll get one. And then you'll have no other option but to sit down and say, okay, listen, what is it that I need to learn? Show me. And we also as in Hindi have the word dheet. They're very stubborn. We don't listen because we think, how can the universe talk to us? The universe talks to you in every moment, from a flower to someone coming and saying, this is what I heard or this is what I read, something flipping open. But this is no coincidence because we don't believe in magic and we don't believe in coincidences. We believe in everything black, white and hard truth.
Also, like you put in your book that everything happens for a reason and nothing is happening to you otherwise. You're the chosen one.
Yeah. So your life is as it is, and it was to be, and it will be. That is how your life is to be.
As you were talking earlier, that you said that when you are doing the shamanic practice, that you do not touch or you do not do anything, you just pray, and then you mentioned about the detachment part of it. Would you like to enlighten the audience more about it?
So, as you're chosen into the lineage and you're given the lineage, you are also given specialities. One of my speciality is grief healing. We call ourselves grief whisperers, only grief. Which means that when someone is going to die, and the soul knows it's time to die, we are the people who help the soul to die, the person to die, so the soul gets released. It's one of the saddest parts to be and hold someone's hand during that part, because the human is breaking down. I've brought many hundred people now who come to me when they're on their stages of dying, from old age to cancer to accident, and they know that they're going, but getting them to the point where they need to release and cut their cords with their family and then to move to the light. Because when they die and they go, there is a phase that they need guidance into. Okay, so that's one of the parts. Because there's grief even when a human knows it's time to go. And then comes the other part of the grief whispering, is the ones who are left behind. Because ones who are left behind, you don't understand. And like I told you before, grief is not pain and loss. It is how much you love. When you love and you hurt. So have you ever seen this thing, like when you say, I really believe, this thing. This is where we store a part of our grief. When you want to release grief in your own body, like when you feel really sad, someone's died, someone's hurt, this is what you actually tap. It's also the thymus, just below, between the thymus and the heart. There's a point out here, this is where you touch. And you need to touch this area and it releases grief. Okay? We store grief in our intestines, in our gut. We don't realize that, but our large intestine, we store grief there. We store anger in our liver. In various organs and parts of our body, we store emotions, but there are specific emotions. So now, the liver is the processing unit, and everything we eat is processed through the liver. Everything happens in your life is processed through your liver. Okay? And when you get angry, the emotion of anger gets stored in the liver. So grief also happens for the people who are left behind. And how do you get the people from that point to a point to say, okay, how do you get them through? Because you will never forget the ones who've passed on. You will never forget that pain, all the last moments. And with every passing year, it's as if it is only a few days ago. But the thing is, how do they get? And then comes a point where I as a person have to cut away from the ones that I am healing. Because they cannot become dependent. Because they will grieve also if something happens here. The first times when I did it, I cried a lot. Because I started getting attached to, them. But there is a larger purpose of me being who I am and what I do. And that cutting, the person will never know the cutting is happening. And then slowly, the walk off. And you have to understand, every relationship, like my teacher used to say, is actually created to end. Sometimes it is created to end now, meaning in the moment, or in another few months, or it can also be in your death. But every relationship, when you address the relationship, knowing it's going to end, you will appreciate it more, make it work better, and realize that you will not hold your anger so much. Because I don't think, you let things fester, and you make things unsaid. And you think, but if you don't know when that time's coming, when it's going to end. And I've seen grief with regret, with sadness. So, when psychologists and all, they've sometimes called me and talked to me about this, the different stages of grief, everything. All I know is that, yes, we have, and when you are in great pain, your energy body breaks up. Like we call it aura, we call it etheric body. There's a physical body that is there, but then there's an energy body. And something inside the energy body also shatters. And the shaman brings back that energy body. And we bring it back and we push it back. We bring back and push your energy back into you. And then we let you go. Our job is never to make you a crutch. The moment I say, you need to come back for the next 10 healing sessions, I'm not into shamanism. I'm not empowering you as a human. When you empower a human, you need to, it's like you mothers, you bring them up and then you let them go. And that was a learning for me. And tough also.
Indeed, I feel the attachment must be really tough. Anyways, moving to the next question. We all know that you are very, very multi-talented, and from being a very successful businesswoman to a mother to a great teacher, a dog lover, a potter, a great cook, and a baker. So your mother mentioned in an interview that she also took up a lot of hobbies when. In her days, and you took up very similar hobbies that she took up in her earlier days. So we would like to know more about your childhood. What did you aspire to be as a kid?
Like I told you, I aspired to join the circus. But my life is a big circus. So I'm doing exactly but in a different way. But so like I told you, my mother has often said this on various interviews, is that before I come to that, I want to tell you, we all choose our parents. Before we come down onto earth, we choose our parents. We choose the people we are going to be born into and also the families we are going to be born into. Reason being because your families and the people that will be born into will have a certain mindset, thought process that you need to be born into, which you will imbibe. And once you imbibe that, things are going to happen into your life, and you will have to change the course or the narration of your life. Either you follow the old narration that your family has been following, or you change it or modify it for the future generations. You all come in and are born into families for reasons, and changing the narration into a positive and as an empowering narration is what each and every job of us. So you can make it into a greedy narration, or you can make it into an empowering narration for your family, for the future, as well as the present and the past. So I chose my mother, I believe, and I cannot I think I had some sense up there to choose her, because it's great to be Blossom Kochharr's daughter in some ways, and in some ways it sucks. Why? Because the fun is to be born to a legend like her. She is a legend. Like I remember when she goes into the industry, 700,000 people, like they just stand in line to, And when I go into South India, people are garlanding her picture in the salons, and all that jazz keeps happening. But being born to a legend, and I remember something my mother told me. She's told me some great words, okay, but one of them was that someone asked us in an interview, she said, so how will she fill into your shoes? She said, God, if she fills into my shoes, I'll be so disappointed. She has to walk in her own. And I think my mom has always, I know why I've been born to my mother, because it's one of the most, she taught me forgiveness. She taught me, you can never stop learning. She's taught me so much in my life. And when I was in her stomach, apparently when she was pregnant with me, she started painting, she started cooking, she was playing cards, and she'd play rummy, and she'd play cards, and she was doing everything, and very creative life. And she never cooked before that. She never painted ever. She never liked music, not much, okay? But she did all this during her pregnancy. And I got born, and after 2 months she stops doing all this. And as my life proceeds, I do exactly the same thing. I love playing my cards. And there is something, I play my cards when I get very stressed. I call my sister into my office and I play cards. Okay, so I do play. So managing director sitting there with her rummy, and I'm very stressed at that point. So, and I do play cards. I do, pottery, painting, cooking, and I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. Do mothers what they do? At that time they are pregnant, does it flow into the child? Or bang opposite? Did I have that DNA already that it was expressing it through my mother? I have no idea, but some jazz happens during that time, okay? So that was one thing, and the other thing, as I said, what was your last part of the question? That
what I asked you, like, what was your childhood like?
My childhood was hilarious. Okay, I come from a working house, which means my mother is a working mother, and she was running. It was a business that was coming up. My dad was a simple army officer, who, they both created the business together, and we parents never come down with handbooks. Like, we're supposed to teach the children this, and we're supposed to teach, and this is how we are supposed to. I think, like I said, only Dr. Spock had that whole thing, which I read from left to right, and my son acted completely 99 degrees opposite to that stupid book. But the whole thing was that, as I grew up for many years in my early, like you said, there's nothing about very few people ask me about my early life, my childhood, but my mother's half Portuguese, English, and we come from the south of India, Nilgiris, Ooty side. That's where, a large part of the Eurasian community had got settled. And I come from coffee estates. So a large part of my mom was working as a working woman. She decided to leave me by the time I was a year old with my grandmother, her mother. And I grew up on a coffee estate. So like I said, I had, elephants coming into the house, and there were deers and there were horses, and everything that was wild was, what I was surrounded with. And I used to run wild. I used to have homeschooling for a while. And then my parents realized that I started calling my aunt mummy, and my mom realized, no, this is really dangerous, so they brought me back to Delhi, but I hated Delhi. That's one of my most traumatic, you say traumas in your life. My father's death, and one of the things also is, when I came back to Delhi, this urban jungle, I couldn't understand it. I hated every moment. So then they took me to the circus. I saw the circus, and I realized it's in the circus where you can always be near the animals. So I decided every 20 days I used to try to run away to the circus. I used to find, in those days we didn't have internet or anything, but I used to try to run away to the circus. Yes, so the circus was my dream. And if I wanted to become something, I know you're not asking me that, but I wanted to become a vet. Yeah, but that never happened. And yeah, but the thing is, I'm very much doctor-like in some other ways.
For sure. So, this is rather personal. What I'm going to ask is, after your father passed away in 2011, you took over as an MD of Blossom Kochharr group of companies. You mentioned in one of your interviews that the first 2 years were very difficult, and as you mentioned right now as well, that it was a whole room of men and not looking into your eyes and doing random things. But amidst all of that, amidst all the grief that you were going through, you still thrived, you still made the business reach the new level. So how did you manage to do that, and how did you thrive at that? What was your muse?
When you're going through shit in life, you just pull along technically. You find one solution and you get onto it, and you get onto it, and you get onto it. I was doing exactly that. And I had no idea why I was sitting on my dad's chair. Because before he passed away, every time he used to tell my son, when I die, you're going to sit on this chair, because he thought he's going to live for a longer time. And my son, because he knew I was the artistic one, and my son was more of, was going to be. I also did remember telling him, you were such a male chauvinist that you had to only think that the grandson was going to sit and not the daughter. He said, I never actually thought. And I remember his last words to me before he had completely gone into coma, was that I'm not prepared for this position or this life, and I don't know how it's going to unroll and happen. He said, but the only thing is that just remember, you're responsible for the people that I leave behind in the company. I did not understand a word what he said, because I was in grief. I didn't understand. I was angry with him. I was angry with everything and everyone. I think 2 years unattended grief, 2 years of just trying to survive in the industry and bring back, because the Blossom Kochharr name and the company it has its own standing in the beauty industry. And in no way did I want the industry to know that we had been hit very bad with his death. And in no way, everyone were waiting for me to bring the company down. And they all were saying, they all used to come every 3 months to buy out the company. And they used to say, ma'am, आपका काम नहीं है, आप अपना पैसा लीजिए, आपको है मिल रहा है करोड़ों मिल रहे हैं, आप लीजिए, आप अमेरिका जाइए, बैठिए, जहाँ भी जाना है यूरोप घूमिए, छोटा सा घर लीजिए, आपको थोड़ा मिलता रहेगा, कंपनी चलती रहेगी, क्या व्यापार वेस्टिंग योर टाइम, आपकी बस की बात नहीं है. It was not a dare. I actually also knew I was not equipped for it, but my mother was very convinced that there was no way that she was going to let the company go at the way it was going to go, and she said we need to bring it to a point. And I remember everyone waiting, everyone thought that it was not possible. And what you asked me was, what was that change? It was a very small incident. We have something called BA advisors in every salon, every counter of ours. And why I want to tell this story is because it comes from Calcutta. In Calcutta, I have around 200 BAs, which means 200 counters where my girls stand. They're only women. They stand and they sell the product. Okay, so they have small counters and they sell the product. And I remember that we had the people in my company wanted to take over the company. There was some group of it and there was a takeover bid. And we had squashed that and I had gone forward. My depots had closed down, which means my own partners, my father's partners had taken crores worth of product and put it away and they were not pushing it into the market. I don't know how, I got the money and I started producing again. And I remember I produced the first lot of product and I pushed it into the market and the sales started happening. But there's a collection time. I think all of you who are in business and who's been in family businesses, there's a collection time of 30 days, 28 to 30 days. And the collection, but between that time I have to pay salaries. And I remember I could not pay, I had only X amount of money to pay salaries. And somewhere the news came into my Calcutta BAs, which are the largest group at that time, it was 100 something. And I remember coming to Calcutta because it was the new release of the products and I was very quiet, very thin, very worried. And I remember the BAs were sitting there and I was addressing them and I said, then I came to a point where I said, I'm sorry, your salary will come, but I will give it 40 days late. If you are okay, if you can't, you can, I cannot do it. I remember the senior most BA getting up to me and she said, आपके फैमिली ने 15 साल हमें हर टाइम पैसे दिए हैं, आप 20 दिन लेट है, हम आपको इतना नहीं दे सकते. आपके पैसे से हमारे बच्चे स्कूल जाते हैं, हमारे घर में खाना मिलता है, हमारे जीवन में जो खुशी है आपके पैसे से, हम आपको 20 दिन की मोहलत दे देते. And that was my changing point for me because I realized I'm not working. When you become a top managing director, you're not working for the Blossom Kochharr name or Samantha Kochharr. There's a larger picture to life always. I'm responsible for a number of my decisions and I'm responsible for a number of people's lives. It can be looked in a way that yes, my God, such responsibility. But the other way is that if I can make money and good money, I can pay my people, I can give them a better life. And for me, I think that was my motivating factor. The people who work in my company, they gave me the respect to go on. And I found my meaning in life.
It's indeed for the larger cause, your universal calling that you work in. There's so much that I wanted to discuss more about you, and I'm sure the audience is also totally amazed by the stories that you have spoken, and we are very inspired, but we're running short of time. This is the last question that I would be putting up. You have completed, because I've rarely read about this part in the interviews, so you have completed a Camino walk. It's a 37-day walk, and it is across France and Spain, covering 799 kilometers. It is difficult to imagine with the amount of focus in your life that has been happening, and like, you know, the things that you manage and the roles you play, how did you manage to come up to do something like that? For
So the Camino is a pilgrimage. It's a by birth, my mother is a Catholic, and when you are born, when an intermarriage happens, my father was Indian. The church, they both married in church also, and the Catholic religion asks for the first child to go into the religion, and so the first child, and my parents decided not to have another child. So yes, I was, went through the whole process of becoming a Catholic. The Camino actually is a pilgrimage from, like you said, from France across to the St. James Church. There are various churches that you visit on the way. There's a movie also called The Way that you should see. So I saw this great movie. Never get inspired by movies because the great editing happens and you have no idea what shit happens behind the scene, okay? So in the movie, everything looked flat, okay? Which means, there were these beautiful rolling hills and flat walks. And I said, oh great, this is the greatest thing to go. So I had decided that after the business is settled down, I would like to take a 1 month holiday. Now when you take a 1 month holiday, it should be relaxing. In my brain, there's nothing known as relaxing. I'm a workaholic by now. So I think, okay, we should do this walk. And this walk will be nice, okay. So I talked about it. Like I said, over my life, I've had not one husband, but a few. So I talked to one of my, and he was a European man, and he said, darling, great idea, let's go for the walk. So we both decided to pack up and we go for the walk. And see, the thing is, the movie edited all the hard part of it. Because the hills they're no rolling straight pathways. Everything goes like this, and then it goes like this, and it goes like this, and it goes like this. And they edited the part about the fact that weather changes every 3 hours from France into Spain. So yes, I went on to the walk starting as a trek. I have no spiritual connection into that, okay. And 5 days down the line, my knee gives up. I see, filled up with water, and then this priest comes and tells me, bow down and ask Jesus to heal this knee, and if he wants you to go on to this pilgrimage, he will. I again thought this man is really lost it. I can't even walk, I can't bend, and he tells me bow. And then he calls me specially and he says bow, and I struggled and bowed, and finally put my head down. If you want me to go for the walk, this is all I said, want me to go for the walk, whoever is there, please get my knee healed. And I got up, and next morning I tied my leg up and I started walking, and after 2 hours, and you walk 30-40 kilometers a day, and nothing less than, you start walking at 4 o'clock, you end walking at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 12 hours of walking continuous, maybe 1.5 hour break. You can't otherwise reach the next town. And I walked 24 kilometers that day. I'm so scared to open up my bandage, and my knee had started really, going down. But I want to tell you one thing. I think some part of my spiritual quest had started on the Camino. And I saw a lot of miracles happen on the Camino. People who've had cancer, they promised God that they're going to walk the Camino. And I walked the Camino. Through the Camino, of course, I realized that the man I am with is the wrong man.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the other books will come out, but that was it. But it was and many realizations happened because you're so alone with your thoughts in your head. So yeah, how did I find time? I have decided to do it. Second is, I think if anyone wants to, I was the only Indian to have reached those places. They used to actually say, are you sure you're Indian? You don't look Indian. And then they'll take a picture. Then I had to show my passport. Say, but Indians don't walk this way. I said, yeah, now the Indian is walking. But it was a phenomenal experience that taught me a lot. And I think one of the things, the takeaways, is that sometimes you need to push yourself into situations that are not that comfortable to actually get to know. But my life's been like that.
So the God really wanted you to complete the walk.
I also want to tell you the church that is the last church there's a big huge cross there, and there's a small box that is kept in that church. And in that box is the piece of the wood of the actual crucifix that the Catholics believe is, where Jesus was. A lot of me changed on that walk. When I came back, I was a different boss. What people say, I really don't know what happened, but some shit did happen, which was good shit. So that was it.
Thank you so much. It has been really, really enlightening hearing about your stories, and I wish we could go on much further. But the time, as we all know, that the Prabhakar Foundation is very time particular, and we are very, very, very honored to have you on board and hear about your life journey. And I'm sure you all are enlightened after this talk. So thanks a lot, for having the conversation with us.
An energy healing session, how does it happen and how long is it?
So, when a healing has to take place, like someone comes and says, I think I need healing. So we can never disregard that request. Then, but we have to ask ourselves, we cannot heal you and say, okay, I'm going to meet you on so-and-so day or whatever, because we first have to ask permission from our guides. Am I supposed to be the healer that is supposed to heal? And what is the problem? What is the core problem? By now I at least have an idea, like whoever the person is, they tell me. If it is not me, I will get an idea of what healing needs to be, and then I suggest to them, maybe they need to do sound healing, water, these are the few elements, and I put them. And you need to find healers in this genre. But at some point when I do a scan also, if it is a scan or something, and I find there is a major sickness in the body, or there is something, and the time is coming, or it's going to be a very tough time, or there is something that has really happened very bad in the person's life, like there has been many incidents of child abuse, and abuse, and many other things. That's the time when if I'm given the permission, I will talk to the person. There's one time I have to talk to the person because I need to be in their energy field with permission, and then after that I don't need the person. I will start doing the healing, and sometimes it goes on for days, like 30, 40 days of praying. But every 3-4 days I keep in touch and ask how you feeling, what happened, any releases, anything. And things keep happening in these 30-40 days. And when I get to know what has happened, because things start emerging. It's like when you open the closet, the skeletons will start falling out. And so we heal that, we heal that, we heal that. And there comes a point, but in these 30-40 days, just know that you're going to be on a roller coaster. So only when you're on a roller coaster, if you're ready to sit on the roller coaster, then decide to. But the universe will send you on to meet at the time the ticket is ready. So, yeah, that is it. And there's no exchange of money in this at all. It is completely based on once you feel at some point in your life when the release has happened, you have to feed at least 2-3 people, poor people, in gratitude to the universe. That's all.
Amazing.
Any other question?
Firstly, I'd like to thank you. Every moment has been so enriching. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I want to tell you a secret, and I just feel it must be told, that I wasn't too well and I had all plans of not coming. Without my thinking, I kept telling everybody, it's so important, I cannot miss it. And I was wondering that, why am I saying this? And then somebody said, no, you please look after yourself. And then I, again without thinking, said that I've lived for everybody, I have to live for myself. And now when you're talking about your stories, I was getting gooseflesh, and I was just wondering, and I've been saying it 4 times, I just thought I'd pick up my phone and I'll send an apology to the Prabhakar people that I can't come, and there's something or the other kept piling up. And without any thought, I just kept saying it's so important for me to be here. So, why I can't understand it, it's so euphoric, it's so magical. And I've just experienced what you were saying about shaman and about everything. I've never heard this name before. Or even if I must have heard it, it never registered. And how just being in your presence heals, and so many things. And I recently lost my father, and so many things were like so similar to what you've gone through. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for sharing that, and also understand that you took a lot of courage to see that, because when we cry and we hurt inside, we've been taught not to share it.
Yes.
And also know that when the time comes, it always is 3 times in our life, but now the number is 21. So 21 times you can actually let go of your life.
Really?
And that's why you should not say this word. When I die, then you will understand. Don't say it.
Because that's one time gone.
Yeah, no, it can happen. The universe will give you anything. Because you don't die to teach a person a lesson.
Absolutely.
You die to teach people to love, not to hurt.
Absolutely. That's how we need attention and affection.
And the universe will send you where it has to send you.
I still can't believe I'm here. I mean, you will understand it more. I was so surprised. Like, why am I saying things and I kept emphasizing as if it's going and meeting the Prime Minister or the who's who? It's impossible. I can die, but I have to come here. And now when you're saying things, I understand what the solid plan the universe had. And God knows what the book is going to do to me. God knows what is coming in the future. God knows after 1 year where I am going to be. But this is a beautiful beginning and I'm truly indebted. Thank you so much.
Like the way you've shared your journey, I mean, it is, yes, every person goes through this, the practical, into the world, scientific way and all. And then you come into that ethereal kind of a layer where, the universe has touched you and this. So, has this had any kind of an impact on your family life? On your, the way you behave with your, the workforce?
I want to, very nice thing you said, because when you take on a spiritual life, it will have an impact. Yes. You will change as a human. And the people around you will get nervous. Because when they get scared of you detaching, the moment you detach means you have, they are losing a part of you, or you are, cutting away. So yes, it does have an impact on your life. Many people, my mother went through the process of saying, I don't want you to pray so much. This is not right. You are going like this. My son also couldn't understand. But I'll tell you what changed in me is you still get angry. You are no saint, okay? You still get angry. You still fall in love. You still make mistakes. You still you do the stupidest things possible. But the whole thing is that you can come back and you can sit, you have more courage to still go back. And you live life in every moment. Because I tell you one last thing, but when we are finally initiated, the last point in our initiation is we determine the age maybe we will pass. And not only we, but 6 other people will determine that age. And when we know that at this point, maybe there's a chance to really go, we start backwards. And how much, and it's not, we don't know when it's going to be time, but we start living, we know when it's our time going to be. So we have to make every moment count. And when you have to make every moment count, the people that come into our lives, the lives that we touch, what we do, how we say, what is left behind, how much we have to forgive, to the worst things possible, they take on prime importance. So yes, if you really tell me what is my bank balance, I'm not that crazy about it. But yes, what is my company figure that is running, I'm very worried, like I told you why. But when the people that have hurt me the maximum, going back to them and saying, sorry, I know I hurt you somewhere for you to also react, but that forgiveness, that closure, because you get to know how many lifetimes left and how much time left. So yes, your life gets impacted.
Thank you, Samantha. That was really an engaging session. On behalf of the Prabha Kaitan Foundation, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Samantha Kochharr and conversationalist Shruti Joakar. I'd also like to thank our associate Taj Bengal and media partner My Kolkata. And last but not the least, you, our wonderful audience, as always. Prabha Kaitan Foundation promotes cross-state cultural understanding and appreciation. This is to support our ongoing efforts to foster unity and appreciation of the rich cultural heritage across India's diverse states. Keeping this in mind, we are pleased to felicitate the author with a giveaway made in beautiful Dokra. Dokra, a non-ferrous metal, is molded by artisans to craft artifacts, accessories, utensils, and jewelry. Deriving its name from the Dokra Damar tribe of West Bengal, this ancient bell metal craft practice is practiced in Bengal. I would now like to request Anita Gulbaksani to felicitate Samantha Kochharr.
Nature has forged an unbreakable bond in all hearts and all life. This love is our divine right, and nothing can take it away.
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
When will we ever see that we must only be to feel the freedom of our unity? For in this great land we share a home, and in this great love a family. For in this great land we share a home, and in this great love a family.